Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Bimbai Mutinhiri Ekpenyong. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning,
Bimbai.
We had a lovely Christmas day, and then as we were resting, we were all woken up by this shocking news. But this is what the whole world is talking about today, especially if you look at all of the international media platforms. And as we're here on the ground, I think it's important for us to lead. So World Brief today is focusing on the airstrikes that have taken place in northwest Nigeria. So, of course, as everybody already knows, the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, and the Department of War have confirmed the launch of numerous airstrikes against ISIS terrorists in Sokoto State, northwest Nigeria, that they have described as perfect, powerful, and deadly. Now, this development was revealed after a series of posts on both X and Truth Social from Trump, Pete Hegseth, and the Department of War itself. The federal government of Nigeria has also confirmed that the strike was performed with its full collaboration in line with established international practice and bilateral understandings. So whilst further details continue to unfold, here is what we do know. It is very likely that this attack may have been launched from the U.S. Navy destroyer known as the USS Paul Ignatius. I hope they can help us put that Navy warship on the screen so you can see the USS Paul Ignatius. And it would have been using Tomahawk cruise missiles. Now, the U.S. Naval Forces Europe and Africa confirmed a port visit of a similar battleship. What you're seeing on your screen is actually a Tomahawk missile. Now, a similar battleship was spotted in Agadir, Morocco on December 9th, and this was confirmed via Twitter by the U.S. Navy. Now, prior to that, it had moored at the Toulon Navy base in France on November 20th. So it has been used for NATO exercises in the past under the Operation Steadfast Defender 2024. It's named after Paul Ignatius, who served as a U.S. Secretary of the Navy under President Lyndon Johnson from 1967 to 1969, and it was commissioned into service into 2019. Now, of course, what you see on your screen at the moment are the Tomahawk cruise missiles. So let's talk about Tomahawk cruise missiles briefly. They are long-range precision weapons that conventionally strike against fixed or semi-fixed targets by using GPS, terrain contour matching, and scene matching. They fly at a low altitude and so are usually very difficult to detect by radar, and that's why they're said to be so impactful. They're typically used for what is known as the opening phases of war. Now, in the past, Tomahawk cruise missiles have been used in Iraq, former Yugoslavia, Libya, and Syria. However, it's also very important for us to note that only the instance of Libya represents a collaborative effort with the nation's government, because at that time, the National Transitional Council had actually actively requested for military support. However, in the cases of former Yugoslavia, Iraq, and so forth, those examples can be described as attacks or invasions. Now, let's come back here to Nigeria, of course, as the airstrikes also came after weeks of United States intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance flights. That's ISR flights over the area. So you can see these on your screen now. This is some data extracted from open source intelligence sources. So you have apps like Flight Radar, for example, where you can go and you can see all aviation activity that happens in the world. It's free, it's accessible to everybody. And you have aviation aficionados who track these aircraft. So you can see here in the Sokoto area where this aircraft, the bottom has been cut off, but the information also contained here will describe the nature of the aircraft. So this was them doing surveillance, trying to get more information of the area. This was on a different day as well, where some similar activity was taking place. And this has been happening over and over again and was also widely reported. Now, however, the targeted area, if we can now move over to our map of the region, the targeted area in the northwest is better known for banditry, whilst concentration of terrorist activity is largely in the northeast. Now, if they can help me with the map on the wall, we want to look at some of the geopolitical dimensions in the region, because we know that Islamic State activity in this area is largely attributed to being an offshoot to similar activity in next-door Niger. Another concern is the expanding presence of Jenim from Burkina Faso into northern Benin Republic and now spilling across the border with Nigeria. So we actually did have a detailed map that showed where the pockets exist, because the other questions were, why is it that this strike did not happen in northeast Nigeria, where we know there's a high concentration of Boko Haram? But that map showed us that if you look at the border with Benin Republic and if you look at the neighboring border for Benin Republic to Burkina Faso and Niger, you see that there's a huge confluence of Jenim and IS as well that are starting to spill over into the Nigerian border. So that context, okay, we finally have that map. So of course we have Sokoto here, and this green color represents the Islamic State. This color here represents Jenim. So you can see that there's a lot of activity happening there. And this is just to address the conversation that people are saying, why not northeast? You can see that there's a huge impending threat coming from the northwestern side because of the activity in the rest of the region. What will the responses of Niger, Burkina Faso be? And of course, we know the Sahel states and Mali. Now, let's move on to reactions on the ground. Videos of residents of Jabo village in Tambuwal local government area of Sokoto state have emerged as they are seen to be examining the debris from the strike. Now, we'll take a look at that video. But whilst we wait on details on casualties, it is clear that the community is still concerned and shaken by the developments. Now, I want to come back to the screen again very quickly, because on the screen we have, okay, I'm going to step to the side. If you come back to me in the studio. So we have, this is one of the pieces of debris that has been picked up from Jabo village. This is cage code 07180, and this is a strong identifier as to the type of missile that was used. So this number here shows us that it belongs to Honeywell International Incorporated, which is a major US defense contractor. They usually do inertial navigation systems, gyroscope and accelerometers, guidance and flight control electronics, and of course, largely used by US and NATO. This next number here, the FSS 78-4, is consistent again with Honeywell flight or guidance systems. FSS is commonly associated with sensor or stabilization assemblies and means that this particular missile was probably produced with ring laser and fiber optic gyros. Consistent again with cruise missiles, precision-guided munitions, UAVs, and advanced aircraft. Lastly, we go to the date code. The date code shows us that this is probably produced on week 47 of 2017. What does this mean? This is part of the upgraded Tomahawks. This is not the old stuff. So this is very, very advanced technology that was used. And then the electrostatic discharge warning symbol down here indicates that it's a sensitive electronic, so this is typical of guidance, navigation, control modules, and it's not consistent with any simple warhead. Again, this is sophisticated stuff. So all of these numbers, as picked up from the debris on the ground, show us that this is consistent with a Tomahawk missile being dropped on the ground, and it rules out any possibility of it having been dropped by a military aircraft or any UAV guidance subsystem. So that is confirmed, along with, I wish we could have seen the picture of that warship. If you've seen the flag on that on the warship, on the USS Paul Ignatius, you would have seen that it's also consistent with the video that the Department of War had uploaded onto social media earlier today to confirm that this is a warship that has come from France, docked in Morocco before stopping in Atlantic waters to launch this attack. Now, as we round up, let's take a look at what Israeli Prime Minister had to say. Benjamin Netanyahu has condemned against attacks on Christians in Nigeria. Of course, this message came before this attack. I have to make it clear. It came before the airstrike. But he is saying that the alleged displacement and violence of Christians is unacceptable, and he's calling for an immediate end to what he termed militant assault on Christian communities. Netanyahu made his remarks during a Christmas message delivered from Jerusalem. Speaking as Israel's prime minister in the holiday address to Christians worldwide, he warned that persecution based on religion cannot be justified anywhere. This is what he had to say.
The persecution of Christians or members of any religion cannot and must not be tolerated. And Muslim militant displacement and attacks against Christians in Nigeria, that too must end, and it must end now. I'm sending Israel's Christmas blessings to our Christian friends around the world.
All right, so it's likely that throughout the weekend and for the coming days, Nigeria is going to be in the global spotlight, and we're going to make sure, again, that we here as Nigerian media will lead that conversation. We'll take our newspaper headlines very quickly. It's a slow day because we know that most of our pressmen do need this time to take a bit of a breather, and I'm sure everybody was shocked when in the middle of the night this news broke. They would have wished that they didn't take Boxing Day off. But traditionally, this day does take the day off on Boxing Day. We'll quickly go to Punch newspaper. Punch is focusing on educational budgets, which is fantastic. Punch is reporting that Anambra, Enugu, Kano and Jigawa are leading education funding in their 2026 budgets, with Anambra allocating nearly 47% of its budget to education. Enugu followed with over 32%, while Kano and Jigawa allocated about 30% and 26%. This is just such fantastic news. Now, unfortunately, in contrast, states like Akwa Ibom and Imo set aside less than 5%. So we're seeing huge disparities. But good to see that these states are following the UNESCO guidelines, which say 15 to 20% should be set aside for education. Leadership newspaper, very quickly, reports that Vice President Kashim Shettima, northern governors and religious bodies and lawmakers have condemned the suicide bomb attack on a mosque in Maiduguri, Borno State, which killed at least 5 worshippers and injured over 30 others. And of course, authorities have now confirmed Boko Haram's involvement and vowed intensified security operations and urged unity against terrorism. We close with Daily Trust. Daily Trust, in contrast to what we're seeing in other papers, is focusing on peaceful Christmas nationwide. Now, of course, we just spoke about that attack that took place in the mosque in Borno, but when you look at a snapshot of the nation, one can say that the festive period so far has generally been a little bit more peaceful, fewer incidents, and worship has marked the season without major incidents, but this is also amidst enhanced security patrols across the nation, and that is what Daily Trust is leading with. And of course, to close, stakeholders set agenda for new oil sector regulatory chiefs as our new heads of the oil sector agencies. Mrs. Orishemeiwa Eyeshon and Engineer Saidu Aliu Mohammed will be resuming work today, I believe. I'm not sure they're taking any holidays. And of course, people are setting the agenda of expectations, what we would like from NUPRC and NMDPRA. Wow, that's what we've got today. Quite a mouthful. Yeah.
Okay, so great. A lot of things to unpack. So actually now, from your reportage, we now know that it was only, from the USS Ignatius destroyer that probably came from. So probably, based on your inferences, they coasted into the Atlantic waters. A Tomahawk would normally do about a range of 2,500 kilometers. Yep. When you look at the range from the Atlantic Ocean into inland Sokoto or the borderline Sokoto, it's about 700 to 800 kilometers. So definitely a Tomahawk can cover that range of variation. So probably they came in through there, used a couple of Tomahawks and everything. So we now know her flight path. So obviously no drones were used. It was just pretty much this. And the serial codes of the charger and all of that, I think this is sub-D-line conductor, for the precision-guided missile, like you said, GPRS outlay and precision strike in this system. So probably they coasted into the waters, but a lot has not been declassified. Only the picture of the ship has been declassified. Yeah. Number of Tomahawks used, not declassified yet, because we don't know how much number. I think the other part of the reportage we'll now want to see is recon on the ground, reconnaissance on the ground, impact heat. Yes, we've gotten some little recon picture, but this doesn't tell the story of everything. Like take, for instance, maybe as daylight breaks, because that was taken deep in the middle of the night. You can see some villagers picking all of this, and these are some debris. So maybe as daylight break, we'll be able to see the real impact on targets. Then maybe maybe as at daylight, they'll be able to show, they'll be able to give the exact coordinates, to the Nigerian authorities to like probably do a recon on ground. And if possible, if the Nigerian authorities will be able to release a D-class report on the recon that they're going to do on ground. But let's see when the recce results come out. But it looks as though nothing happened, to the locals and the villagers. But like I said before, people will start pushing the narrative of those things. Dr. Abati, all the things I said, as I was analyzing on the show, you can see the narrative being espoused already. They will push the narrative as regards, civilian rights and everything, but the villagers have not complained of anything as regards civilian rights. So the only thing was maybe the intrusion, the noise they heard in the middle of the night and all of that, that's happened. So it's a developing story. We would like to see the recce from the Nigerian authorities and ascertain casualty levels from the recces of the Nigerian authorities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point, more than ever, based on the potential politicization of this airstrike, is to manage information and to ensure that people get the right information. And that's why, in terms of giving numbers and facts, we've been very careful this morning because it has to be done sensitively. We had Mr. Jega speak about the feelings among some of the residents in that area. And you talk about how some of the, the residents, the people in that community have come out a bit apprehensive. Some of them, and as expected, some of them are unsure. And at this point, to manage any potential of reprisals based on misinformation, it is important that people are very careful with the language that they use. And that's why I move away very strongly against what people like Shegumi this morning have released without any kind of rigor in terms of the information they have on ground. And it's just baiting and just going to cause a lot of division through misinformation. And that's why I just want to appeal to people this morning that based on the information gotten so far, the number of casualties have been minimized, and deliberately so that the people in the northern region ought to be rejoicing and celebrating the fact that at a very long while, they might be seeing some hope, some light at the end of the tunnel based on the decimation of terrorists. The key word is that it's terrorists that are being targeted, not civilians. It's not a call of war or declaration of war in that region. It is just simply terrorists being decimated. And finally, on this note, that when we spoke about Maiduguri, Borno State, the night before, we must remember that it is the people in the northern region who are in very many cases, the most affected when it comes to actions of terrorism. And that's why every single Nigerian at this point, patriotic, must put hands together to ensure that whether we're working with international partners or not, we come out of this victorious and we fight the terrorists once and for all.
Well, in addition to all that I said when we were discussing the headlines, I would just like to add a few more points. Yesterday, I was talking about the age of Trump, the year of Trump. This is another reminder of how President Donald Trump continues to assert himself as a superior power, namely the United States in the world. Now, this year alone, 2025, you have had American operations in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Venezuela, Syria, Somalia, and now Nigeria, which is again a reminder of this, superior power, primary power influence of the United States. Two, I think it is important that the Nigerian government is insisting, and the U.S. War Department is saying this is something done in collaboration with Nigeria. And I think going forward, the the Directorate of Defense Information, the Ministry of Information, to which the Nigerian government will have to do a lot in terms of conscientization, in terms of information, to prevent those who are determined to politicize this development or misinform the Nigerian people from going ahead with their mischief to tie this to politics because of the circumstances ahead of the 2027 general elections. Three, in terms of the operation that you have talked about, look, the Armed Forces, the Africa Command headquarters is in Stuttgart, Germany. That's in Germany. Now they have a big headquarters somewhere in Djibouti. But what they have across West Africa is training operations and missions in Cameroon, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Ghana, after they were chased out of Niger in 2024, where the Americans had a big operation. Now, America is also gradually finding itself, strengthening itself within this West African sub-region. So it is also important for us to note that. And then this is not guns a-blazing. This is bomb a-blazing. Now, those who are saying, oh, okay, no casualties and all that, we've not been told there are casualties. They should know that in this kind of situation, as President Trump warned in his closing paragraphs, in his statement, there could be collateral damages. So this is the beginning of a new phase in terms of Nigeria's effort to fight and combat international terrorism. The only safe side is that, okay, those talking about sovereignty, I said, look, some of these arguments that people are bringing up, they come from ignorance, from sheer asinine, puerile, understanding of this subject. So this is not about politics, but Nigeria should be prepared for the fact that this is a new phase in terms of how we fight terrorism. The government has a lot of work to do. I think that's just about it, more or less. If the subject comes up again, I will have thought up other dimensions.
But I also love that you're emphasizing that, these are precision missiles. It's not boots on the ground.
Yes.
Because misinformation is already alluding to, there are no boots on the ground.
Yes, absolutely.
It's
and I think also to emphasize that it's a collaboration as well, because we've had some people talk about it being US. The Nigerian government worked in collaboration with the United States.
Part of the narrative, let me read one to you. What's it called? ADP.
Yes, just
raises constitutional concerns over a reported US airstrike. They are saying, the national chairman of ADP, Engineer Yebaga Yusuf Sani, no government serious about sovereignty should outsource the use of force against its own enemies. Fighting terrorism must come with an excuse for quietly surrendering national authority. You can see the narrative.
You must debunk misinformation like that.
You can see the narrative.
Thank you so much, Bimbai, for a very detailed reportage and brilliant take on today's, on the airstrikes, the US airstrikes, US airstrikes in collaboration with Nigerian military forces. Thank you.